So the idea here is the following. Project starts. There's a phase what I like to call the right start. And the right start contains two important activities. One we already talked about, which is establishing effective teams, right? So the first thing when a project starts is how are you going to set up your team, right? So I believe setting up value team and delivery team is a very good structure. The second piece is what we call alignment or chartering, right? We talked a little bit about chartering yesterday, and I told you we'll talk all about it. So after I present this, we'll dive right into chartering. This provides the right start, and I believe this right start, and I have statistics to show, or research to show to support this, contributes to 90% of the success of the project. These two activities. Okay. Then, what I call the planning phase. I believe agile projects, as flexible and agile as they are, need to be able to answer this fundamental question. What am I going to get, when, and for how much? Fair enough? Now, the analogy I use here is actually quite strong. It's exactly like a GPS. In a GPS, you put your destination, and it does some very sophisticated calculation to tell you when are you going to get there, which route you're going to take, right? And then the moment you start driving, it changes. And that's okay. So we're going to do everything we can to come up with a good estimate, tell you what you're going to get, when, and for how much, and as soon as we start working, it's okay to change. That's the mindset shift, right? So the GPS can't, I would not accept the GPS where if I put in my destination, it says, don't worry, just follow me, dude. Don't worry, I'm agile. I'll get you there. It's like, dude, but how much is it going to take? Don't worry. I can't tell you. We don't know exactly how much. Yeah, just give me a ballpark. Well, it doesn't. We don't know. We're agile. That's a bunch of baloney, right? You need to tell me something, and we can change it. So we'll see how to do that, right? We'll talk a little bit about release planning. We're not going to touch base on each and every one of these practices because some of them are very common sense, okay? But we're going to go through this, and there's 3 steps here. Creating a backlog, and a backlog is basically our to-do list, for lack of a better term. But there's some certain characteristics about it we'll talk about. How to estimate the backlog, how to do something called road mapping, and then release planning. And now we go into a release. So this big outer box is a release. This release may have several iterations inside of it. Okay, an iteration is a small deliverable of working software. Okay, now in this iteration, we do at the beginning of it something called iteration planning. We have our daily work in which everyone's doing what they need to do, right? The testers are testing, the developers are developing, and the value team is preparing for the next iteration. So the value team is always one step ahead. We have we radiate information continuously, and we have our daily stand-ups to talk about things. At the end of the iteration, we demo, we show people what we accomplished, and we talk about, as a team, what are good ideas to change as we approach the next iteration. This is the retrospective we did at the end of yesterday. The question then becomes, is it good enough? Should we release or keep going? All right. If we say no, then we have another iteration. If we say yes, then we do any pre-release work we may need to do, UAT, and we're out of the door. Cool? Questions? Okay. So each Agile practice has 3 components. What I like to call the anatomy of an Agile practice. So none of us are doctors here, but imagine if we were, and we're looking at the anatomy of a practice. So the practice has what I'd like to call form, ceremony, and motions, right? These are the evident activities and behaviors that manifest that the team is doing a practice. Then we have the value, the impact, and the essence. What we're supposed to get out of it. Now, if we're doing the form, ceremony, and motion, and we're not getting the value and the impact or the essence of it, then we're doing empty rituals. Make sense? Now, if we're achieving the value, the impact, and the essence without doing the form, ceremony, or motion, are we okay? Yeah, it's fine. Remember, these change. These are the practices, they change. But what we want to ensure is we're constantly getting the value out of this. And this is really important because if we're getting this, why would we care about this? Then we have what we call the enablers, sustainers, and supporters. These are things that need to exist for us to successfully adopt this practice and maintain the adoption of the practice. Make sense? So these are items that don't relate directly to the practice, but need to be there for the practice to be adopted in the first place. Let me give you guys an example. Daily stand-ups. The anatomy of the practice. Meeting every day for 15 minutes is the motion. Now, why are we doing this? What's the value or the essence we need to get out of it? That impediments are addressed, that there is enhanced communication and less assumptions between the team. True? So if we're meeting for 15 minutes every day, but these things are still there, then the stand-up isn't performing its purpose. Now, if we have an alternative means of achieving this, and we're not doing this, are we okay? Totally. I've seen so many teams, they're sitting together, right? Do we need to have a daily stand-up? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. It totally depends on the team. But some teams, the daily stand-up is an empty ritual. What did you do yesterday? You were with me. Do I really need to tell you? Well, the process says you need to say so. So say so. All right, I did this and this. What did you do? Dude, I was sitting right beside you. You know everything I did. We were pairing. Right? So that's the kind of stuff we're looking for. Now, the enablers or sustainers and supporters, right? Buying. Do people understand the value of the daily stand-up? Do people understand that this is what we want to get out of it? Or do they understand it simply as a ritual? Right? Willingness to set time aside. And if people already have too many meetings, how can they do it? So these are real practical enablers for this to succeed.